The cameras went dark, but the chaos was just beginning. What happened after WWE Raw finished in New York City wasn't just another wrestling moment, it was something nobody could have predicted. Roman Reigns didn't just confront Bronson Reed when the broadcast ended. He unleashed something that crossed every line between performance and reality. When the New York Police Department actually had to step into that arena to restore order, everyone knew this wasn't part of any script. What you're about to read is the complete breakdown of the most controversial post-show incident in recent wrestling history, and if you weren't inside Madison Square Garden that night, you missed something that will never air on television. Before we go any further, do me a favor and subscribe to Ring Rumble because we bring you the unfiltered truth that other channels won't touch. This is the real story behind the chaos. Monday Night Raw was happening at Madison Square Garden, the most legendary venue in all of sports entertainment. The energy in that building was electric from the first bell to the final segment. Matches were delivering exactly what the fans wanted. The main event portion of the show was building towards something huge. Roman Reigns was scheduled to appear and everyone in that arena knew someone was about to have a very bad night. Bronson Reed had been running his mouth for weeks, calling out top names, demolishing opponents, and making a lot of noise on his way up the card. Reed is a powerful competitor who has been turning heads with his impressive performances, but he made one critical error that would change everything. He disrespected Roman Reigns by name, with an attitude that suggested he didn't fully understand who he was dealing with. When Roman's entrance music hit the speakers, the entire building erupted. 20,000 people jumped to their feet as the tribal chief made his way to the ring. The presence he commands cannot be overstated. Every step down that ramp carried weight. This wasn't a man coming to have a conversation. This was a hunter closing in on his target. The atmosphere shifted completely the moment his music started. You could feel the anticipation building with every second. People were pulling out their phones, desperate to capture what they knew would be an unforgettable moment. The lighting in the arena seemed to change, casting shadows that made Roman look even more intimidating than usual. His eyes were locked on Bronson Reed, never wavering, never blinking, just pure focused intensity that sent a clear message before a single word was spoken. Bronson Reed stood in the ring holding a microphone, projecting confidence, but anyone watching closely could see the shift in his body language when Roman got closer. His shoulders tensed up slightly. His grip on that microphone tightened. The bravado he had shown for weeks started showing tiny cracks. Talking about the tribal chief is one thing. Standing across the ring from him is something completely different. This is the man who has dominated the company for years, who has defeated every legend put in front of him, who has held championships and broken records that seemed untouchable. This is someone who has made grown men look like children in that ring. This is the competitor who redefined what it means to be the face of a company. Reed was about to learn a lesson that no amount of preparation could have readied him for. The confrontation started with words. Both men trading verbal shots, trying to establish dominance before anything physical happened. Reed was doing his best to stand tall, to project strength, to convince everyone watching that he belonged in this moment. He talked about his accomplishments, his victories, his rising status in the company. He mentioned how he had taken out multiple opponents in recent weeks. He talked about being the future while Roman was clinging to the past. The insults were cutting, designed to get under Roman's skin and provoke a reaction. But there was something in his eyes that told a different story. That flicker of recognition that maybe he had pushed too far, maybe he had called down thunder he wasn't prepared to handle. You could see it in the way his voice occasionally wavered just slightly, in the way he kept adjusting his stance, in the micro-expressions that betrayed his true emotional state underneath all that bravado. Roman wasn't rushing anything. He was calculating, measuring, waiting for the right moment to strike. He let Reed talk. He let him dig his own grave with every word. The tribal chief had been in this position countless times before. He knew how to control the moment, how to manipulate the atmosphere, how to make an entire arena hang on his every movement. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. Every word carried the weight of someone who had nothing left to prove but everything to protect. He talked about respect. He talked about legacy. He talked about the countless bodies he had left in his wake on the path to becoming the undisputed head of the table. The tension was building with every passing second until finally it happened. Reed made physical contact first, pushing Roman with both hands. Whether that was adrenaline, strategy, or just poor judgment, it didn't matter. That push was the spark that lit the fuse. The crowd gasped collectively. Everyone knew what that push meant. Everyone understood that Reed had just crossed a line that very few people dare to cross. Roman's face didn't register anger or surprise. It showed focus. Cold, surgical focus. That's actually more terrifying than rage because rage is emotional and unpredictable. Focus is deliberate and devastating. For a split second, the entire arena seemed to freeze. Roman tilted his head slightly, almost like he was confirming to himself that Reed had actually been foolish enough to put hands on him. Then everything exploded into violence. The Superman punch came fast and hard. Reed's head snapped back from the impact. The sound echoed through the arena. The crowd roared its approval, but Roman was already moving into his next attack. There was no pause, no hesitation, no moment to recover. Another Superman punch connected clean, this one even harder than the first. Reed was wobbling now, trying to keep his balance but clearly hurt. His legs looked unsteady. His arms dropped slightly, his defensive posture compromised. Everyone in that arena knew what was coming next. The setup was perfect. Roman positioned himself in the corner, coiled like a spring ready to release. The crowd was on its feet, anticipating the signature move that has ended countless matches and careers. Roman loaded up, charged across the ring with frightening speed for a man his size, and delivered a spear that echoed through the entire building. The impact looked devastating. Reed crashed to the mat and didn't move. His body went completely limp upon contact. The force of the spear had knocked every bit of air from his lungs and possibly his consciousness too. Under normal circumstances, that would be the end. Reed is down, Roman stands tall, music hits, show ends. But nothing about what happened next was normal. Roman didn't celebrate. He didn't acknowledge the cheering crowd. He didn't do his typical post-match ritual. Instead, he stood over Bronson Reed's motionless body with an expression that made it clear this wasn't finished. His chest was heaving. His fists were still clenched. The look in his eyes suggested something had snapped inside him, something that went beyond the scripted rivalry they were supposed to be portraying. The announcers were trying to wrap up the broadcast, trying to send viewers home, trying to transition into the closing elements of the show. You could hear the uncertainty in their voices. They were professionals trying to maintain composure while clearly not knowing what was happening or what to say. Then the television feed cut to black. The broadcast ended. Millions watching at home saw credits roll and assumed that was the conclusion. But inside Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people remained in their seats because they could see what the cameras were no longer showing. They could see Roman circling Reed's body like a predator. They could see the rage still burning in his eyes. They could see that this situation was far from over. The energy in the arena shifted from excitement to something darker, something more primal. People in the front rows were leaning forward, sensing they were about to witness something unprecedented. Others looked concerned, wondering if they should stay or leave, uncertain about what was about to unfold but unable to look away. Roman grabbed Bronson Reed and dragged him out of the ring. Not carefully, not with any regard for safety protocols or proper procedures. This was violent and raw, treating a 300-pound man like he weighed nothing. Reed was barely responsive, his body moving like dead weight, offering no resistance, no defense, no awareness of what was happening to him. Roman threw him into the barricade with such force that the steel barrier bent on impact. The sound was sickening, metal grinding and buckling. Fans in the front row scattered backwards, some looking genuinely concerned about their own safety. One fan had to pull their child out of the way as Reed's body crashed into the section where they had been standing just seconds before. The looks on people's faces changed from excitement to genuine worry. This didn't feel like entertainment anymore. Then Roman drove Reed face first into the ring steps. The sound of flesh and bone meeting steel rang out clear and sharp. It wasn't the usual worked collision that looks impressive but is carefully controlled. This was Reed's face actually connecting with unforgiving metal with nothing held back. His head bounced off the steel and his body crumpled in a heap at the base of the steps. A gasp went through the crowd. Some people instinctively covered their mouths. Children in attendance looked to their parents with confusion and fear. This was crossing into territory that felt dangerous and real in ways that professional wrestling rarely does. The announce table was next. Roman swept everything off the surface with one aggressive motion. Monitors crashed to the floor, screens shattering on impact. Chairs went flying, clattering across the ringside area. Headsets were ripped apart. Papers scattered everywhere. The announcers themselves had fled their positions, backing away from what was clearly about to happen. Roman positioned Reed on the table, taking his time now, making sure everyone in that arena understood what was coming. He lifted Bronson Reed's entire body weight above his head, muscles straining, veins bulging, holding him there for just a moment so the image would burn into everyone's memory. Then he drove Reed down through the table with a powerbomb that looked like it could have broken bones. The table didn't just break, it exploded into pieces, with splintering in every direction. The destruction was total and complete. Reed's body lay motionless in the wreckage, surrounded by debris, looking like a victim of something far worse than a wrestling match. The crowd reaction was deafening. This was clearly off script. This felt real in a way that scripted violence never does. People were screaming, not with excitement but with genuine shock. Roman was operating on pure instinct and emotion, completely outside the bounds of what anyone expected to see. His breathing was heavy and labored. Sweat poured down his face. His expression showed no satisfaction, no triumph, only continued rage that hadn't been satisfied by the destruction he had already caused. But then the situation escalated beyond anything anyone expected. WWE officials started flooding the ringside area. Producers in headsets, agents in suits, referees in striped shirts, everyone with any authority tried to form a barrier between Roman and Reed. They were shouting at the top of their lungs, physically trying to pull Roman away, grabbing at his arms and shoulders, and he was having none of it. He shoved them aside like they were inconvenient obstacles, like they were insects buzzing around his head. One official got too close, tried to grab Roman from behind to restrain him, and Roman pushed him so hard he tumbled over the barricade into the crowd's seating area. The official landed awkwardly, rolling several rows deep into the audience. Security personnel in their yellow shirts rushed in next, at least a dozen of them, forming a human wall to separate the two wrestlers. These were big guys, former athletes themselves, trained to handle physical confrontations. But Roman looked at them with pure contempt, his body language making it clear he would go through every single one of them if necessary. He was screaming words that television would never allow on air, profanity mixed with threats mixed with assertions of dominance. The security team was trying to talk him down, trying to reason with him, trying to appeal to some rational part of his brain that clearly wasn't in control at that moment. Some of them looked genuinely nervous, uncertain if they should get physical with the company's top star or if that would only make things worse. The situation was spiraling, escalating beyond anyone's control, reaching a point where real injury seemed not just possible but likely. Then came the moment that transformed this from a wrestling incident into something much more serious. The New York Police Department entered the arena. Not private security, not WWE personnel pretending to be law enforcement for a storyline. Actual NYPD officers, at least 6 of them initially, walking down the entrance ramp with the authority of their badges and uniforms clearly visible under the arena lights. These weren't extras hired for the show. These were real sworn officers who had been stationed at the venue for crowd control and public safety. They had been monitoring the situation from their posts and made the decision to intervene when it became clear that WWE's internal security couldn't handle what was happening. These are professionals who deal with real violence and dangerous situations every single day. They've seen fights, assaults, domestic disturbances, all manner of human conflict. They approached Roman with that trained calm that law enforcement develops over years on the job, that professional demeanor designed to de-escalate tense situations before they spiral completely out of control. They positioned themselves between Roman and everyone else, forming a new barrier that carried far more weight than any security team. Their presence alone should have been enough to end any situation. These weren't people Roman could dismiss or intimidate. These were representatives of actual legal authority, people with the power to arrest, to charge with crimes, to bring the full weight of the justice system down on anyone who crossed certain lines. One officer stepped forward, an older veteran with gray hair and decades of experience written on his face. He placed a hand on Roman's chest, not aggressive but firm, a non-threatening gesture that nonetheless communicated a simple message without words. Enough. This ends now. You need to step back and calm down before someone gets seriously hurt or arrested. What happened next will be analyzed and debated for years. Roman Reigns looked at those NYPD officers and didn't comply. He didn't back down. He didn't recognize their authority in that moment. Instead, he brushed the officer's hand away with his own, not violently enough to constitute assault, but dismissively, like swatting away something annoying and irrelevant. The gesture was loaded with meaning and disrespect. The statement was unmistakable. Nobody tells the tribal chief when he's done. Not WWE officials, not security, and not even law enforcement. The officer's expression changed, his professional calm cracking slightly to show surprise and concern. Other officers immediately moved closer, their body language shifting to a more defensive posture. Hands moved to their belts, not reaching for weapons but positioning themselves near equipment in case the situation required a more forceful response. The tension in that arena became suffocating. The crowd had shifted from excited to genuinely nervous. Some people near the exit started quietly leaving, not wanting to be present if this turned into something that required police action. Parents covered their children's eyes or started guiding them toward the concourses. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a real confrontation between a professional wrestler running on adrenaline and rage and law enforcement officers with a job to do and the authority to do whatever was necessary to maintain order and public safety. The atmosphere felt dangerous in a way that scripted wrestling never should. Everyone in that building understood they were witnessing something that could have serious legal consequences, something that could end careers and result in criminal charges. More officers arrived in response to radio calls from their colleagues. The count reached 10, maybe 12, all positioning themselves around the scene. They weren't being aggressive but they were prepared for any possibility. Hands positioned near their equipment. Radios crackling with communication, coordinating with supervisors and additional backup. Some officers were talking to WWE officials, getting information about who Roman was, what his role in the company was, whether this was somehow still part of the show despite all evidence suggesting otherwise. Backup was being requested and dispatched. This situation was seconds away from becoming a national news story for all the wrong reasons. Celebrity wrestler arrested at Madison Square Garden. WWE star in physical confrontation with police. The headlines were practically writing themselves and everyone involved knew it. Then Paul Heyman appeared, sprinting down the ramp in his expensive suit, his tie flying behind him, completely out of breath and visibly panicked in a way no one had ever seen him before. The Wiseman, the special counsel to the tribal chief, the legendary manager and advocate who always has the perfect words for any situation, looked genuinely terrified of what might happen in the next 60 seconds. He was older, not in the physical condition to be running like that, but desperation drove him forward at maximum speed. Heyman had been in the back when reports came flooding in about what was happening. He knew Roman better than anyone. He understood what this moment meant and what the consequences could be. The only person in the company who can reach Roman when he's in this state, when he's operating purely on emotion and instinct without regard for consequences or future ramifications. Heyman positioned himself between Roman and the officers and started talking fast, words tumbling out in a desperate stream, using every persuasive technique in his considerable arsenal developed over decades in the business. Nobody knows exactly what he said, but witnesses reported it was a combination of pleading and reasoning, appealing to Roman's intelligence and his understanding of what was at stake. You've made your point. Everyone knows who you are. The whole world has seen your power. But this ends careers. This ends everything you've built. Everything we've built together. You're too smart for this. You're too important for this. Walk away now. You've already destroyed him. Everyone saw it. Your dominance is established beyond any question. Don't destroy yourself. Don't throw away your legacy, your family's legacy, everything you've worked for, over this. Please, trust me. Walk away. His voice was cracking with emotion. Genuine tears appeared in his eyes as he pleaded with his longtime friend and client. Heyman's hands were shaking. He kept glancing nervously at the police officers, knowing that every second this continued increased the chances of an arrest that would change everything. WWE officials stood nearby, equally terrified, knowing their entire business could be impacted by whatever happened in the next few moments. If Roman got arrested, if this became a legal situation, if mainstream media picked up the story of their top star assaulting someone and resisting police, the damage would be incalculable. Sponsors would flee. Television deals could be impacted. The company's reputation would suffer enormously. Everything hinged on getting Roman to stand down in the next crucial seconds. For 30 seconds that felt like an eternity, Roman didn't move. He stared at the officers with unblinking intensity. His breathing was heavy, chest rising and falling rapidly. His fists were still clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Every muscle in his body looked coiled and ready to explode into violence if anyone made the wrong move. The entire arena was holding its breath, 20,000 people frozen in collective anticipation and dread. You could have heard a pin drop despite the massive crowd. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Roman took one step backward, then another. The officers held their positions but didn't advance, giving him space to retreat without forcing a confrontation. Heyman stayed between everyone, never stopping talking, maintaining a constant stream of words, guiding Roman back up the ramp with careful movements and continuous reassurance. But Roman wasn't leaving without making one final statement. As he backed away, he pointed at Bronson Reed's body being treated by medical personnel, EMTs who had rushed to the scene with equipment and were checking his vital signs with obvious concern. Roman screamed loud enough for everyone in the building to hear, his voice raw and primal. That's what happens when you disrespect the tribal chief. Nobody does that. You want to mention my name, you better put some respect on it or you end up like that. This is my company. This is my ring. This is my era. And nobody, not him, not anyone in that locker room, not these cops, nobody tells me when I'm finished. The words echoed through Madison Square Garden with chilling clarity. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and stunned reaction, unsure how to process what they had just witnessed. Some people were chanting Roman's name, swept up in the intensity and spectacle. Others stood in shocked silence, processing the violence and the very real danger of the situation. The officers finally relaxed slightly but maintained their presence, staying at ringside to ensure nothing else happened. Bronson Reed was being carefully loaded onto a stretcher by medical personnel who were moving with urgent efficiency. His neck was being stabilized with a brace. An oxygen mask covered his face. He appeared to be unconscious or at least barely conscious, not responding to questions from the EMTs. The ringside area looked like a disaster zone, debris scattered everywhere, the destroyed table, the bent barricade, equipment smashed and broken. Roman Reigns disappeared through the curtain with Paul Heyman's arm around his shoulders, guiding him away from the scene. Behind them they left absolute chaos and countless unanswered questions that would dominate wrestling discussions for months to come. Within minutes, cell phone footage started appearing on social media platforms. Shaky videos from fans in the upper sections, shot from far away but capturing the essential moments. Closer shots from people at ringside who kept recording after the official broadcast ended, some with remarkably clear footage of the entire incident. The footage spread instantly across every platform like wildfire. Twitter exploded with reactions, the wrestling community absolutely losing its mind trying to understand what had just happened. Hashtags related to Roman and the incident started trending worldwide within 15 minutes. Reddit communities went into overdrive analyzing every frame, slowing down videos, trying to determine what was real and what might have been worked. YouTube channels began breaking down the incident second by second, some rushing out content within an hour to capitalize on the massive interest. Wrestling news sites crashed from traffic overload as everyone tried to get information about what had occurred after the cameras stopped rolling. WWE's public relations team went into full crisis mode, an emergency meeting called immediately to determine how to handle the situation. This wasn't a storyline they could control or spin. This wasn't packaged entertainment with a predetermined outcome. This was their top star in a legitimate confrontation with law enforcement at one of the world's most famous venues. This represented potential legal liability, possible criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and mainstream media attention that the company absolutely did not want. Every minute that passed without an official statement allowed speculation to run wild. The PR team was fielding calls from news outlets, from concerned sponsors, from television network executives wanting to know what the hell happened and whether their investment in WWE programming was about to become a massive problem. Major news outlets picked up the story with frightening speed. ESPN ran breaking news about the incident. TMZ had reporters reaching out to sources. Entertainment Tonight covered it as a celebrity story. Headlines appeared about a WWE star in a confrontation with NYPD. Stories ran about a post-show incident under investigation. Articles discussed wrestling violence spilling into the real world, questioning where the line is between performance and actual assault. Mainstream journalists who never cover wrestling were suddenly writing about Roman Reigns and asking uncomfortable questions about the industry. WWE released an official statement hours later, after much internal debate about the exact wording, carefully crafted and deliberately vague to avoid admitting liability while appearing to take the situation seriously. An incident occurred after Monday Night Raw concluded. WWE is cooperating with local authorities and taking the matter very seriously. We do not condone violence outside the context of our programming. Counseling and additional support resources are being made available. That statement said everything and nothing at the same time, masterful corporate language designed to protect the company while not condemning their biggest star, leaving maximum flexibility for whatever actions might need to be taken. The NYPD released their own statement through their public information office after consulting with precinct commanders and department leadership. Officers responded to a disturbance at Madison Square Garden involving a physical altercation that had escalated beyond the control of venue security. The situation was resolved without arrests through de-escalation techniques. No charges are being filed at this time. The matter remains under review. That phrase "at this time" carried enormous weight, leaving doors open and keeping everyone involved on edge, ensuring that if new information emerged or if political pressure mounted, charges could still potentially be filed. It kept Roman legally vulnerable and WWE worried. If you've made it this far through this deep breakdown and found yourself as captivated by this story as I was researching every detail, I really need you to hit that subscribe button right now for Ring Rumble. We're building something special here, a community of wrestling fans who want honest, detailed analysis without corporate filters or agenda-driven narratives. Subscribe now and turn on those notifications so you never miss content like this that goes deeper than surface-level coverage. The biggest question everyone was asking, debating endlessly online and in person, was why? Why did Roman react this way? What pushed him past every boundary and professional standard? Was it something Bronson Reed said that cameras didn't capture, some personal insult that crossed lines that should never be crossed? Witnesses who were close to ringside when Reed had the microphone claimed they heard him say something about Roman's family, possibly referencing personal matters or making comments about the bloodline that went beyond acceptable trash talk. If true, that would explain the extreme reaction, the complete loss of control, the transformation from calculated performer to genuine aggressor. In wrestling culture, family comments are generally off limits unless specifically agreed upon in advance. If Reed went into business for himself and crossed that line without permission, Roman's response, while extreme, would at least have context. Was it weeks of frustration finally boiling over? Roman has been at the top of the company for years, carrying enormous pressure and responsibility. Creative meetings, political maneuvering backstage, contract negotiations, public appearances, maintaining his physique and performance level, dealing with critics and expectations. The weight of being the face of a billion-dollar company never stops pressing down. Perhaps something in Reed's attitude or words became the final straw that broke through years of professional restraint. Was it Roman sending a message to the entire locker room about consequences? A demonstration of power that would make everyone think twice before challenging him or stepping out of line? A reminder that despite all the corporate structure and professional standards, at the end of the day, the tribal chief operates by his own code and his own rules? Or was something deeper and more personal driving his actions? Issues in his personal life, family matters, health concerns, conflicts with management, frustrations about the direction of his character or the company? We may never know the complete truth. Insiders started talking carefully, speaking off the record to trusted journalists. Wrestling reporters worked their sources throughout the industry, trying to piece together the real story behind what happened. Rumors spread rapidly through the wrestling community online and backstage at other promotions. The incident will be discussed for years. It will be referenced in documentaries and retrospectives. It will serve as a case study in how quickly professional wrestling can transition from scripted entertainment into genuine chaos and real-world consequences. The Roman Reigns incident at Monday Night Raw will echo through wrestling history as one of those rare moments when the curtain was pulled back completely and everyone saw something raw, real, and dangerous that reminded them this business exists on the edge between performance and violence.